there is different types of things that happen in people's lives that it's really out of their control. And every parent is this their first time they're doing it. They're not going to be perfect. If we expect our parents to be perfect, they're not.
Welcome to the Immigrant Experience in America, an immigrant human library, where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants in the United States and around the world. Listen in as we add another story to our immigrant human library.
Welcome, friends. Thank you for joining the Immigrant Experience in America, a place where we amplify and humanize the experiences of immigrants living around the world. Today we have joining you Mr. Nick Berg from Tehran. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Please correct me. Welcome, Mr. Berg.
Oh, thank you, Simone. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, it's so great to have you on the show. Can you tell us a bit about Mr. Nick Berg and what's your origin story?
Sure, absolutely. So my story is a little bit different. I come, as I call it, from two different worlds. My mother is Iranian and my father is American. But I grew up in Iran until I was about 19 years old. And then through a series of things after the revolution in Iran and all of those things, I moved to the United States. And it was a journey to get to the United States. And then once I was in the U.S., I had to learn English. I had to learn everything from scratch very much because it was a pretty big culture shock for me. And then going from there, my first place was U.S. Army. And joining the U.S. Army and being there for almost 11 years. And then finally transitioning to civilian life from there.
Okay, great. So I have a few snippets about your upcoming book, but it looks like you have some in print already. Tell us a bit about your book and how it ties into your life story.
Sure. So the book is called Shadows of Tehran, and it's a series of events. I call it a fictional autobiographical story. It's based on my life story, but it has some embellishes in it, and that kind of helps me to tell the story a bit more vividly than actual memoir that would be basically recounting the facts in the process. The story it touches on emotional aspects of life. Growing up in a country as a dual nationality, not fitting into either one of those countries, and being different in every aspect. And when I was growing up in Iran, everybody looked at me as the American boy, and when I came to America, everybody looked at me as the Iranian guy. So it's kind of not fitting into either one of those worlds and being kind of, as I call myself, the citizen of the earth. And just depending on which side of the rock I happen to be, that growing up down that side of the rock or living on this side of the rock. So the book is really about the story of resilience because during the time I was growing up in Iran, it was the war between Iran and Iraq, the revolution. Life completely turned upside down practically overnight after the revolution took over and the old government went out and the Islamic government took over. All the rules changed. Everything you knew how to live a life completely changed within the span of months. And then trying to live in that country and then all of the values changed. And being a half American, it was a time that they took the American hostages in the U.S. Embassy and all of that stuff. So the story starts from there and goes into becoming a rebel against the Islamic government in Iran and trying to win freedoms back, trying to win women's freedoms back. And I was young and stupid back then, thinking I can change the world. And eventually being able having to get out of Iran basically secretly because of the government finding out, and at the time the government was pretty brutal, and leaving Iran and coming to the U.S. Through a series of things and once in the U.S., joining the U.S. Army, and I couldn't just stay put, so I had to join Special Operations, and then traveling all around the world with the Army, being in the first Gulf War, being in Rwanda during the genocide, being in Sierra Leone, being in Bosnia during the conflict over there, spending a lot of time in African countries, in Middle East, as well as Europe, and trying to kind of figure out what are the right things that I needed to do and how I can help the people that were there at the time. When you think about the military, you don't really think about helping people, but it is helping people and trying to help the defenseless people of the world. But at the same time, from an immigrant perspective, I was still a foreigner in a foreign army. So it was kind of like trying to fit in, try understanding the cultural aspects of things. I'll give you a funny story. One time I was talking to somebody about Iran, and they looked at me and they said, "Well, you're pulling my leg." And I'm like, "I didn't touch your leg." And so then they had to explain to me that it's a kind of a slang that you have to understand. And
Right.
I started catching on at that point.
Wow. Welcome to my world. I'm very pleased to hear you talk about your third culture person experience, which is basically what you are. You're born in one place, your parents are from two different worlds, but you're developing a culture all of your own, right? And then you come into the US and you don't fit in either of your parents' culture. And so you form something of your own. So it's a third culture that you've developed. There's most people think about third culture kids, but for adults, I experience exactly what you're talking about, just not fitting in or just feeling like you belong in either place.
Right.
So I completely relate to that. Um, so I wanted to slow down a bit. Tell us about, because interestingly, when I look at you, for me, from a Afro descendant person, I'm
Mhm.
thinking you look like a white male in the American perspective, right?
Right.
But here you are with this interesting story of not fitting in. Like, give us
So I'll tell you a funny story about that is that when I first came to the United States, I landed in Detroit, and that's in the book as well. And I landed in one of those neighborhoods because I didn't have any money, didn't know anybody. But landed in one of those areas of Detroit that nobody wants to go. And in Iran, and I've been very open with you, in Iran, we don't have any African descendants in Iran. Everybody's kind of white. And so it was a complete culture shock for me and learning and really understanding the differences in races and how white and black in America is so different and the way they look at each other and the subcultures and all of that. It was such an interesting perspective for me because I made some really, really great friends in that area of Detroit as well that are still lifelong friends, that I'm still friends with them. I remember an incident. I was walking down the street one time, and these 3 or 4 guys jump out from the corner, and they're like, "What are you doing here, white boy?" And a couple other guys from the area come back and say, "He ain't white, man. Just let him go. He's fine. Don't worry about it. Just let him go." So that experience was a very unique experience for me, starting in America and learning about it.
Wow, 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 wow. That's interesting. You landed in a predominantly black neighborhood, right? And
Right.
look nothing like the people, and you have no idea what you're getting yourself into.
Right, exactly, exactly.
Well, I'm happy to hear that you were able to bridge the culture and formed relationships that have lasted the test of time. That is great to hear.
Yes, it is. It's like one of the really, really good friend of mine, and we actually joined the army together. He's a black gentleman. We joined the army together, and we're still really, really good friends. And we went through basic training together and got stationed together, and we both got out, and we're still really, really good friends, and we still connect once in a while. And I still go back to that old neighborhood once in a while. I connect with some of the old people that I knew from over there. They're all old like me now, but um, it's uh, it's still very interesting for me. That one
Right.
thing I realize is that no matter where you go in the world, what color you are, what background you got culturally, is that people are all people. They all care about taking care of their families. They all take doing the right thing, living their life, and it doesn't matter who they are, where they come from, what the background is. The basics that we're all humans and we all follow the same process.
Hmm. Beautiful, beautiful. That's my position too. I've traveled, I've experienced different cultures, connected with different people, have friends from across different backgrounds. And so, when you realize you start looking at similarities from where you come and from where they come, the way you guys do things, differences, similarities, and then you just realize that you guys just really want to enjoy this life and understand it more at the
Right.
end of the day, right? We are all really struggling just to make sense of this life and why we're here and what we're here for and all of that. Um, but beautiful, beautiful. But I want to go back a little bit to learn more about Tehran and how long you were there and what was going on during the time that you were in the country and your experience.
Sure. When I was in Tehran, first of all, is a beautiful city. It's a very modern city. A lot of people that haven't traveled to that part of the world don't understand how modern it is. And it's one of the most beautiful cities. It's on the outskirts of a volcano, actually, and
Mm.
it's surrounded by mountains. And one of the reasons that it's such a polluted city once in a while, and especially during the summers, is because it's in a valley and the air doesn't move. So, but it's a city of almost 10 million people. It's a very large city, very urban areas inside of the city. The northern part of the city being the better part of the town, and the southern part being a little bit more where poorer people live, kind of in that process, and everything in between the south and the north. And I grew up in Tehran as kind of growing up there. I always consider it home, no matter where I live in the world. Tehran has always have a special place for me. And the people are Iran are the most hospitable people in the world that you ever meet. They're famous for their hospitality and all of that. But at the same time, during that time, it was a very the turmoil in the city and everything else, and all of the sudden all of your connections broke with the revolution. The people, the ideologies, the religious ideologies, and all of that kind of split people up into different groups and into different
Mm.
camps. There were people that wanted the Shah back. There were people that wanted the Islamic government to be a lot harsher than it was. There were people that were in the middle of all of it, and it's all about influences and how they grew up, and how their thought processes are. It's I always say, when you anybody that has believes in certain kind of a religion is because their parents believed in that. You take the same person, and if they were born in a Buddhist family, they'll become Buddhist. If they were born in a Christian family, they'll become Christian. That's usually how it starts. And unless you actively look and seek for the truth and really understand the differences and understand the similarities, it really causes a lot of issues if they don't, because everybody loves religion as long as it's their religion and not somebody else's. So it's in that environment in Tehran, that was really the biggest thing, is that everybody wanted religion, but they wanted theirs and not anybody else's. So the government and all of that became very religious, and they changed all of the dynamics of the country. Before the revolution in Iran, women were judges, women were in government positions, and all of that. Overnight, they had to wear a scarf. They have to wear loose clothing when they come into the streets. They had to. Everything changed. Everything changed overnight.
Wow. And what was that like? I'm wondering, how did your parents meet? Is there a story behind that?
Yes. So my dad was in the U.S. Navy, and he was in Vietnam, and he was a naval intelligence officer, and he worked for the CIA later on. And so he is both docked in one of the southern Iranian cities on the Persian Gulf, and he came to Iran, and he got out of the Navy, and that's where he met my mother. And my dad, when he left Iran when I was 7 years old and came to the U.S. And I didn't find him until 36 years later in Las Vegas. So that's in the book. So, so as at the time my dad left, right after we even came to the U.S. looking for him, we couldn't find him. Went back. Later, years later, I figured out he was a really high official in the CIA, and he passed away about a year and a half ago. And so, and he actually had a lot to do with how my life turned out without me even knowing it. He knew exactly where I was, what I was doing, and all of those things in the military and all of that. And I had no idea that he was in the background, kind of pulling the strings.
What do you mean? Like basically, like he had some, people reporting on your well-being, and um,
No, he
did
was
someone
directing my
actually?
military missions.
Oh, wow. So did he influence you getting into the army without you indirectly?
Indirectly, yes. Without,
Wow.
yes.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's kind of like there's a movie out there called Blacklist where this guy keeps up with I actually didn't finish watching it, but it seemed like it was his daughter, and he
Yes.
just knew everywhere she went, and um yeah, that's amazing. But based on his mission, he had to leave. It sounds like what happened.
Yes. So he had to leave Iran, and years later, because I found out that he had actually had an Egyptian wife as well, and I have some half Egyptian brothers and sisters, and I have American African American brother and sister as well that I didn't know about. So so over the years, so on his dying bed, I spent about 3 weeks before he passed with him, trying to understand his story. And his thought process, he was a patriot, and all he cared about was his job and his country. And I asked him, I said, so all these women that you married and have kids, and what was the purpose? And he basically, his answer was, well, the best cover is when you have a family. That was his story. So I spent 3 weeks writing down all of the things that he could talk about with me and telling me his life story. So hopefully the next book is going to be the third book that I'm writing is going to be about his stories and his life story.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm intrigued. So did he actually? I'm sitting here thinking, did he actually get divorced, or was he had like multiple wives?
No, he just had different identities with different wives, and he never technically divorced my mother. And he until my mother actually divorced him in his absence, but he just that was his lifestyle. He traveled all over the world and created families and left, pretty much.
Wow, this is amazing because you watch these roles played out in movies,
Yeah,
and then you wonder like how do they keep straight the different characters or life that they're living, and I'm sitting here wondering how did he keep all of the details straight, like with you're with this person and you have this name and this personality with this person, like how do you not mix it up? But I guess once he left one wife, I guess he was out of their life, and so
right,
yeah,
exactly.
he
Yeah,
didn't have to keep multiple stories going at the same time.
yeah, because originally he comes from a German background, and all of that. That's just the things I found out later. But he always claimed he was French, and then another time he claimed he was Norwegian, and different passports, different names, different identities. And it sounds like a movie, but it's true.
That's amazing, though. And for you to learn and find him 30 something years later, what was it like for your mom? Like, did he just disappear, or did she know that he went back to the US?
He said he was his original story was he was going to come to the U.S. and buy a house and get everything settled and move us there. He left, and within 3 months we couldn't contact him anymore. After he left, there was no trace of him.
Wow. Are your siblings from Egypt, are they older or younger?
I don't know. I haven't met them, so they're all younger than me because my mom was the first one. So they're all younger than me, and I have no idea. I found one of them in Chicago area. She lives in Chicago area, but she doesn't want to talk to me. So I'm like, okay, I'm not going to disrupt your life, but
Wow, that's so interesting. And the African American lady you said you think you have another sibling, are
yes.
on the is this on the US side? Have
It's
you
on
met
the U.S.
her?
side. Yeah, she lives in Florida actually, and I tried contacting her. She doesn't want to talk to me either. They all hate my dad so much they don't want to talk to me either. But it's
Oh,
and it's okay. It's after what I went through and all of that, you learn that people have their own demons and they have their own struggles and those things, and you have to be okay with that. And you kind of let them do their thing. And if they decide to come and contact me, that's great. And if they don't, that's their prerogative and that's their choice. And I don't hold anything against them for it. And I don't even hold anything against my father for it because he lived a different life as well. So who am I to judge anybody at this point?
right, right. I can imagine. He probably had his own internal struggles as well, right?
Right, exactly.
Knowing the reality of having multiple lives and all of that. So I can't even imagine his internal conversation.
Right,
Um,
exactly. Yeah, yeah.
wow. But I'm happy you were able to connect with him later in life and get his story and spend some time with him.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Join us again next time for part 2 of this episode. We thank our listeners around the world, and we appreciate your continued support as we build our human library. Please remember to give us a 5-star review, subscribe, and share with your friends, family, and circle of influence.